International Women's Day is almost upon us as the world prepares to celebrate a day of recognition on Wednesday, March 8th. The UN theme of this year's International Women's Day is Digital, Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality. Its focus is to highlight the contributions of women to the growing digital world. This comes amid the obstacles they face in a field that has not always welcomed or appreciated them. Another important issue that is being addressed this year is online violence that women journalists are forced to endure in the course of their work. A survey found that 73% of women journalists from 125 countries have suffered violence while on the job. Well, joining us now to discuss all of this and more is Ms. Kathryn Travers, policy specialist in ending violence against women with UN Women. Ma'am, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thank you very much, Nima. Happy to be here.
So, what is behind this year's theme for International Women's Day? Why focus on the digital world in particular?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think there's a couple of elements to it. We are still in the midst of a global pandemic, which really forced us all to pivot in a number of ways. Many of those ways were to the virtual and so to these digital spaces, where they became spaces for education, for access to healthcare, for socializing, and for connection with other people, including for our jobs. And so, really, we had an increased dependency on digital spaces. Now, the other element of the theme that I just want to stress here as well is the digital. So, of course, it's a play on words, and I'm not sure if your viewers saw that on screen, but there is an ALL emphasized and in capitals at the end there. And that's really to highlight the need for this to be something that all women and girls are able to benefit from this digital revolution.
And would you be able to give us a little bit more clarity in terms of the sort of obstacles that are faced by women in terms of STEM careers and education overall?
Yeah, thanks. There are a number of barriers that women face. There's the question of access to begin with. And so we know that globally there continues to be what we call a digital gender gap, which means that in 2022, for example, there were 259 million more men than women who were using the internet. And so that's already, in terms of access, a big gap. There's, of course, gaps in terms of connectivity. We only have to think of rural and urban spaces, for example, in terms of the reliance that we have for that. And then one important element that we also really see that acts as a barrier to all of the potential positive and opportunities offered by the digital revolution, and that's the violence that women and girls face online and in digital spaces.
Yes, I definitely want to touch on the issue of online violence. So, a very interesting statistic UN Women points to about journalists. About 73% of women journalists from 125 countries say they suffered some form of online violence. So, what does this look like, and what is the key issue behind this?
Yeah, it's interesting because the online violence and violence through technology, this is not a new phenomenon, but really the pandemic has put a spotlight on it. So it's only now that we're starting to get more information in terms of data. So while we don't have global prevalence yet, there are indications that it ranges somewhere between 16% in some places to 60% in other places, and even higher. And so there are some groups of women, particularly those who are the most visible online. So journalists like yourself, as you rightly mentioned, also women in politics, activists, women human rights defenders are all disproportionately targeted. So that can look like a number of different things. It can look like online stalking. It can look like doxing, where you release the information about where a person's going to be or where they live, online harassment. It can also be very present in interpersonal relationships. So, an extension of intimate partner violence, for example, or other things like people you don't know sending you intimate images of themselves or distributing your own intimate images without your consent.
All right, Ms. Travers, just about a minute left here. So let's talk about solutions. What are some ways that policymakers and business leaders can encourage more women to participate in the digital world as well as provide more safety and opportunities for them?
Yeah, so there's 2 points there. So one is we do need more women and diverse women driving this agenda forward. So that's encouraging more girls to enter STEM fields, perhaps offering things like scholarships, making more visible women's contribution as well, having opportunities for mentorship and things like this. But a lot is also needed around things like regulations and laws and legislation around generating data to even understand what is it that we're talking about here. And then, of course, in the everyday lives of people really understanding what respect looks like online, how to stand up for other people online and be an active bystander, as we say, and really make sure that what we're creating with this digital revolution is a space that upholds human rights for all women and girls, where they're able to benefit equally from the opportunities that are present through this revolution.